Let's begin.
Hello and welcome to Pods Above Replacement, part of the Padres Hot Tub Podcast Network. My name is Raphie Cancer. I am the producer of Padres Hot Tub, and joining me from the Mile High City, he's jogging out of the bullpen, so say your prayers. It's John Fracoda!
Dude, my induced vertical is so high right now. You don't want to be under my table.
Wow. Induced vertical, slightly horny, I have to say.
The bonk? You need to do the bonk?
Yeah, I need the bonk. Give me the bonk. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
I'm well. I'm well, John. I'm excited to be continuing on our little mini series that we're doing that we have titled The Bubble Boys.
The Bubble Boys.
I think episode 1, which referenced the gentlemen who are on the bubble to make the starting rotation, went quite swimmingly. And I expect morale to continue to improve with our second part of the series, in which we cover the guys who are on the bullpen, the bubble to make the bullpen.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, the Bubble Boys of the bullpen. Say that 5 times fast.
Bubble was the bullpen. Bubble was the bullpen.
Oh, wow. All right. Gave up after 2. So
it's like that lollipop. What is it? How many licks does it take? Give up after 2, man.
Give up after 2.
Remember that commercial? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a Tootsie Roll commercial, isn't it? Yeah, with the owl.
With the owl.
Yeah,
exactly.
We have culture from before our time. We can hang.
Hey, I saw that commercial on TV before.
It was on Cartoon Network. I remember. Yeah. So why don't we start with some ground rules? Much in the same way that when we did the Bubble Boys starting pitcher edition, we did not cover Yu Darvish or Michael King or any of these other guys who are definitely going to be in the rotation. We're not going to spend time today talking about Robert Suarez, Jason Adam, Jeremiah Estrada, Adrian Morejon. Those guys are for sure locks to be in the bullpen. Brian Hoeing probably, and even if he is a bubble boy, we already talked about him in the last episode, so we're not going to talk about him. Wouldn't it be funny if we just did the exact same, like no new research, no new take, didn't acknowledge, not even just did it again, like a different rendition, but didn't acknowledge it all.
See who's actually listening, who's like, what the fuck, you guys didn't even mention the fact that you just did the same exact takes on Brian Hoeing. Or we could also switch up the takes if you wanted to. Just like say, actually, he's, you know what we should do? We should make him into a starter. He should be, he's going to be great. He's number 3 starter for the Padres going forward.
Yeah, what is he doing in the bullpen? Yeah. So, John, you made the order of the pitchers in our document that we reference. I'm wondering, was there a method to this madness, or is it just guys who came to mind?
Yeah, dude. What the actual method to the madness was the whole reason I wanted to make this episode in the first place is because I get infuriated when folks put Yuki Matsui and Wandy Peralta on like the same tier of bad contracts that we have going forward. They're like, oh, we made these terrible relief pitcher contracts like Yuki Matsui and Wandy Peralta, as though they're comparable people. And so Yuki Matsui and Wandy Peralta, based on that, were the first 2 folks that I put on the list. And then the other order was just random, but I have a bone to pick with anybody who puts Yuki Matsui and Wandy Peralta on the same level of pitcher quality going forward.
Yeah, it's funny. Yuki and Wandy are the 2 pitchers we're going to talk about first in this episode. And if we're being honest, neither of them are probably bubble boys. Like, no. by nature of the fact that they are, both making, $4 million, I think, or each of them are somewhere around there this year. So, those guys aren't going to be chilling in El Paso. Like, they will be on the team or they will be on the Phantom IL. Those are the 2 options. So, why don't we just, you already kind of teed yourself up nicely. Let's start with Yuki Matsui. Let's start with the Japanese import who is 29 years old now. I think he'll be 30 for next season. He'll be officially an age 30 type player. Interesting numbers, especially when you break it down by different parts of the season, John.
Yeah, man. I mean, part of the reason why it frustrates me so much is when folks are like not super stoked on Yuki is because we started the season with Yuki with certain parameters in mind when we were thinking about him, right? We were like, okay, he's coming over from Japan, starting a whole new life. He has for the first time in his life, he has to pitch with a ball that's slightly bigger in terms of diameter. He's a smaller guy overall. It might take him a little bit to, adjust to the baseball itself, or just adjust to major league hitters, to adjust to life over in the States. I bet that he's probably going to have a little bit of a struggle at first, and then hopefully what we want is him to improve as the season goes on. That's literally exactly what he did. And still, with him doing exactly what you would have expected, and in some ways outperforming what you would have expected in his first year over in the States for a 5-year contract, him getting shade for improving as the year goes on makes me a little bit frustrated. And just to put some numbers to that, so March, April, he had 5.52 Ks per 9 and 3.68 walks per 9, which is a terrible ratio between strikeouts and walks. It led to an xFIP of 451, right? Didn't get off to the hottest start. That's fine. And then in May, his xFIP was 482. In June, 518. And these were mostly guided by the fact that he was walking way too many folks. So in May and June, his walk rate both above 6 walks per 9. And so he's walking too many folks. So that leads to a poor xFIP. His numbers overall weren't great. And he was saying that Niebla was getting mad at him and wanted him to throw strikes. And so he started to throw strikes. In July, he walked 0.96 walks per 9. So went down by, from 6 to 1. And then his xFIP was 265. And at the same time, his K rate went up to 12.54 Ks per 9. So in July and August, his strikeout rates were above 11. And his walk rates were below 1. What more would you want out of a reliever, especially in his first year in the major leagues, to be having a K rate over 11 and a walk rate under 1? So, and his xFIP lined up with that perfectly. They were 265 in July and 243 in August. And then he kind of just didn't get any run in September and October because he was pushed down on the, hierarchy overall. He was behind a lot of folks. Morejon passed him up. And then we traded for 2 guys. Suarez was still above him, so he didn't get much run. But overall, if you're looking at what you would have expected out of Yuki Matsui, I feel like it would be a lot like what his results ended up being.
Yeah. I one of the things I love about Yuki is he is so adaptable. One of the things we talked about in our Bubble Boys starting pitcher edition was Randy Vasquez and Johnny Brito. Each having
it's just Vasco. Those two.
Randy Vasco is
Ronnie
Vasco. Ronnie Vasco is the okay. So okay. No, this is great.
This is what gets him excited. Everybody, this is
Ronnie Vasco. What we're implying there is that if you're getting one side of the platoon of each of these players is an interesting guy,
now we're talking.
And Yuki Matsui is a guy who can pitch to both sides of the plate. Like, he is Ronnie Vasco in fastball or in reliever form, because
in Insanity World.
Yeah, exactly. In this like weird Cronenberg type way. Yeah. Because against lefties, he's a very classic fastball slider. Throws a great slider that is his out pitch against lefties. But then when he's facing righties, he has this fantastic splitter that he really got more confident with as the season went on. And he's just a fastball splitter guy against righties. And, the reason this guy has a career as it's worth saying this, sub 93 mile an hour fastball guy, his average fastball was 92.2 miles an hour last year, is because he has a ridiculous induced rise on his fastball. John, you talked briefly about his struggles early on in the season. One of the things that I was looking at specifically was the month of May, which was not a good month for Yuki. He had his strikeouts were up there, but he was walking almost 7 guys per 9.
Yeah.
And the main issue that was happening there is that he stopped being able to locate his fastball in that month. He had the lowest zone percentage of his fastball than any other month in the season. It was 44%. And you pair that with the fact that The chase rate on his fastball was also by far the lowest that it was. It was less than 10%. So he wasn't throwing it for strikes, and also no one was chasing it when he was throwing it outside of the zone. And so when you don't have your fastball, you know, when with a guy like Yuki Matsui's profile, you don't have anything. There's nothing to set your pitches up against. And I think the main thing holding Yuki back right now is a couple of things. One, he's probably not going to throw any harder in his career. He's already 30. Like, we're not going to, this is not a guy who is, you know, I expect to add 2 or 3 ticks to his fastball, which, by the way, like, I think if you kept Yuki Matsui exactly the same in every way, but his fastball was 94 instead of 92, he might be like a top 25 reliever in baseball. Like,
I feel like he'd be Tanner Scott. I feel like
I
Tanner
really
Scott
believe that
is a good, you know, comparison to Matsui more than Morihone if you were able to ramp up that velocity.
Yeah. Even with a 94 mile an hour fastball, whereas Scott was throwing 98, 99, because of just how much his fastball rises. Like, it's not quite Estrada level, but it's close. And I think in terms of induced rise, right? It's more
per miles per hour. So accounting for the velocity, it's the most on the Padres. It's 4th most in the major leagues, at least among I think it's actually above anybody who's thrown more than an inning. So he has an incredible amount of induced rise on his fastball, his 4-seam fastball. And so even though he's throwing the ball, whatever it was, like 92.2 miles per hour overall, he has the same amount of drop on his fastball, actually less drop on his fastball, you know, accounting for gravity, than Adrian Morihone does when Adrian Morihone's throwing the ball 97 miles an hour. So if you think about his fastball, it's basically, you know, coming in like Morihone's fastball would be, but 5 miles an hour less. So, I mean, that kind of spin on the ball is not what you would expect at all when you're coming up to, you know, hit it. You're expecting like a parabola on it, and it's not following that parabola. And just that difference, that being different than what you would expect, allows him to play with his fastball at 92 miles an hour at the top of the zone in a way that not many pitchers can. There's kind of similar pitchers overall that you might think of that are, you know, guys who can survive with less velocity. Guys like Nick Pivetta, guys like Christian Javier, who had a very great run in the playoffs. Despite being a, you know, starting pitcher, he was able to survive with a fastball at the top of the zone despite throwing even less miles per hour than Yuki Matsui. And that's because it's so weird to see a ball come out at 91, 92 miles an hour and have that kind of ride on it. And, you know, Yuki's in the bullpen, so folks aren't going to see him all the time, which means folks are probably never going to get comfortable with him, or at least it's going to take a long time for folks to get comfortable with him. You know, his fastball, sure, it's not very fast, but it is quirky, and that quirkiness allows it to be successful at the top of the zone.
Yeah. So he's not a guy who's going to add a bunch of velocity, and he maybe doesn't even need to. My question is, he throws his splitter and slider both at 86 miles an hour. The splitter, I think, is probably going to stick somewhere around there because he's throwing it like a fastball. Like, that's, you know, it is a split-fingered fastball. And John, you know more about this than I do, and so I do kind of defer to you on this, but do you think it's possible that they could work on arm action in such a manner that Yuki could decrease the velocity of his slider just a little bit, like 80 to like 83 or 84, as opposed to it being 86, and just creating a larger gap between his fastball and secondary pitch?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it would just depend on what exactly he's trying to get across. Like, are we trying to increase the gap so that the slider plays better? Are we trying to increase the gap so that the fastball plays better? You know, he's going to be using both of them against left-handed hitters predominantly, and he has success against left-handed hitters overall. So I mean, that's definitely like, something that you could do, but I don't know if it's first on the order of operations. I feel like, if anything, trying to work on being able to have the splitter four-seam mixture against righties, because he has a higher walk rate and splitters are harder to land in the zone, might a little bit be higher on the order of operations, especially if he can land it, the splitter kind of glove side for his four-seamer and then break a splitter off of that to right-handed hitters. Because his split finger does not tunnel super well with his four seam fastball against right-handed hitters yet, but he can get there, and he probably will. I think that's probably first in the order of operations for me. But yeah, increasing in the delta is always good.
Yeah. I'd have to double check. I'm trying to pull it up very quickly. I wanted to say that his I have it right here. I'll fix it in a second. The zone percentage on his split finger is 26.5, which isn't. Yeah, I mean, like, again, he's throwing it to get people to chase, so you're not going to expect it to have a super high zone percentage. But I mean, it's not a strike pitch. You're throwing it betting that you're going to fool someone, and if he's not tunneling it, then hitters are going to evolve. Is that kind of like what you're getting at?
Yeah, but you still need to keep people honest, because, okay, so if I'm coming up to face Yuki Matsui and I know that he is unable to throw that splitter in the zone more than 25% or whatever, that's like lower than Blake Snell throws a slider in the zone if you compare it, and Blake Snell never throws a slider in the strike zone. So you know that means that what are you doing? You're probably hunting four-seam fastball early on in the count, right? And so his four-seam fastball is great for 92 miles an hour, but it's still 92 miles an hour, and it's hittable overall, you know? So I feel like it's quick. You'd be much more quick to make an adjustment to, you know, hunting fastball against him as a right-handed hitter than, you know, if he could at least occasionally land that, you know, arm side low and away to a right-handed hitter, then it's going to keep you honest.
Well, and just to counter that, his slider has a 43.3% zone rate. So you think about that what is that, 17, 18 point difference between the two? You know, that's the difference between extreme efficacy against lefties and so efficacy against righties. Is, you know, you go up to a righty and tell them before they get to the plate, if you can identify the splitter, just lay off of it every time, make him throw you a fastball. That's it.
And his walk rate against lefties is 2.8 per 9, and against righties it's 4.5 per 9. So almost double, you know. So folks are queuing in on that.
Yeah. But overall, I am quite excited about Yuki Matsui. I can absolutely see what AJ Preller and Ruben Niebla saw in him when they brought him over. And I do expect him to have a better year. Any other thoughts on Yuki before we go to Wandy?
Yeah, so this is just a good transition into Wandy, just because like one of the stickier stats for pitchers are xFIP is pretty sticky. Probably even better is your K percent minus your walk percent. And I let's see if I have those numbers. Yeah, so no, I actually don't have them overall, but in the first half, his K minus walk percent was 10%, which is not very good, but still better than Wandy Peralta's for his career. In the second half, it was 28.7. So he was striking out 11.69 per 9 and walking 1.61 per 9, which means that, I mean, if he's able to continue that, if you're able to strike out people at that rate and walk people at that rate, then you're going to have to give up a ton of really hard contact in order to fail. And, you know, that sets you up for success going forward. Wandy, on the other hand, is going to be completely different. Did you want to set him up, or do you want me to set him up?
No, go. Keep going.
Yeah, so Wandy is the opposite guy. He's a guy who, you know, stat heads like us are never going to like a Wandy Peralta. I don't understand exactly what we were so excited about when it came to Wandy Peralta. So this is the exact opposite argument in that he doesn't strike people out and he walks people. So now, in order to succeed, you have to give up just the lightest of contact at all times, because so many balls are going into play. Just by flipping that coin that many times, you're going to give up hits, right? And so there's basically nobody in the relief role who's ever successful with his strikeout rate minus his walk rate. It's too close together. It's basically the same. So he's just, you know, giving up contact all the time, and he has to survive on incredible BABIP. And I will give him credit. He does get better, you know, soft contact than most pitchers, because he's, you know, able to locate things and he's able to throw a sinker that gets weaker contact. That being said, you just can't survive. You just can't do it. Eventually it's going to come back and hurt you. And so you're paying a guy for 4 years The 4 years ago, Dinelson Lamet was number one starter for the Padres. Think about that. So then, this year and then 3 more years, what's going to be changed? He's probably not even going to be somebody that we ever want in the relief role at all. So he's not Yuki to me. He's just a guy that I cannot believe we gave 4 years. And just to let me put a few numbers to the walk rate minus or the K rate minus walk rate, and he was 246 out of 254 relief pitchers with at least 30 innings. So one of the worst in the league, and that's one of the stickiest stats. So the names on this list that are in his range include scary pitchers such as Peter Lambert, Jordan Leisure, Jordan Weems. Yeah, this is actually a who's who of who. Justin Lawrence, Chris Stratton, and then some former Padres, Tim Hill, Brent Honeywell, and Steven Wilson, mostly because Steven Wilson walked 7 batters per 9, which is an insane amount last year. So there's literally no pitchers that are ever successful with walk or with K rates, K percentages minus ball percentage or walk percentages that are similar to his. It's just impossible to be good. So I don't understand what the whole plan was going forward.
God, poor Steven Wilson. We really just sent him
7 walks per 9. That's crazy.
It's crazy, and we really just sent him to languish on the south side of Chicago into relative obscurity. The season after Wandy Peralta hit the free agent market, or I should say, after Wandy Peralta hit the free agent market, that is to say, after his final year in New York, it was very evident that whatever team signed him was going to have to pay a sucker's premium on him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who Wandy Peralta's agent is, but anytime a team floated in a contract offer, the agent could reply with a simple 1-word or 2-word email. 2.83 ERA. 2.83 ERA. Oh, you want to pay
after
him?
a 2.72 ERA, by the way. So that's,
Yeah.
So this is who he is.
He's had back-to-back sub-3 ERA seasons. You can sell anyone on that, truly. If you go a couple columns to the right, though, you can see in that last season, he had a 5.05 FIP. Why? Because he walked everyone. He had a 5 walks per 9 rate. It is shocking. If you told me like any reliever had a 5 walks per 9 rate, especially throwing as many innings as he did that year, I would be shocked that they would still be in the major leagues. I would have thought they would have had to go and work on things in AAA. Wandy Peralta happened to also put up in his final season in New York an 85% left on base percentage, which is not a sticky stat. And, one of the biggest beneficiaries of this was Blake Snell in his Cy Young winning season with the Padres. Was that he had, I think, just about an 85 or 86% left on base percentage, led the league with that, while also throwing, about 5 walks per 9. So he had a Snell-esque season. The only thing is that while Blake Snell was striking out like 11 or 12 guys per 9, Wandy Peralta struck out 8.5 in his final year.
Which was the best of his career, by the way. 8.5 was
best
the best
of his
whole career.
So he was always not going to be a good signing for whoever signed him. It was quite the head scratcher when it turned out that AJ Preller was the one who took the bait. I really thought that a team like the Rockies would fall for it, a team that's not very analytically driven. And that's because Wandy Peralta suffers from a debilitating case of Johnny Brito syndrome, which is that he throws a fastball, a sinker, a changeup, but the difference between him and Johnny Brito is that Johnny Brito throws a fastball 2 to 3 miles an hour faster than Wandy Peralta does. And let me explain briefly why it's an issue, and then we'll get to talking about his batted ball contact stuff. So I don't know what the proper name for this is. I, in my head, called it the reverse ground ball, fly ball directional value matrix, which is not very good. But basically, what you want to know is that ground balls, these are outcomes for pitchers, outcomes for defenses. Ground balls are good when they're pulled, and they're bad when they're hit the other way. And fly balls are bad when they're pulled and good when they're hit the other way. You understand what I'm saying?
No,
Like,
you just did the same for both of those. You said ground balls are good.
For ground balls are good when they're pulled and bad when they're hit the other way as the defense. And fly balls are bad when they're pulled and good when they're hit the other way. Because fly balls that are pulled tend to go for home runs.
Yeah.
Or for power.
Yeah. So
Whereas
from a pitcher's perspective is what you're saying.
From a pitcher's perspective is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is especially the case with lefties where you can set up defensively. Lefties pulling ground balls, shout out Eric Hosmer, like is a good, you want as a pitcher, you want lefties to pull ground balls because the defense is going to be optimally aligned for that. You don't want them pulling fly balls because it means they're probably taking you into the seats. Likewise, you don't want them hitting ground balls in the opposite way because your defense is not aligned to face that. Whereas fly balls hit the other way likely aren't getting hit as far, so they'll likely go for flyouts.
It's hard to hit it for a home run. Did you know that Cronenworth still, this has been like a meme that I've been doing all season long in the Discord, but he still hasn't hit an opposite field home run, even just an inch to the left of center field. The whole career, never hit one the other way. And it's because he doesn't have enough power to physically do it. And this is, that lines up exactly with what your point is.
So, yeah, maybe we'll get to that in our next episode. Who's to say? But one thing that Jake Cronenworth was quite good at for certain points of the season was hitting ground balls in the opposite direction. And that was where he got a decent amount of his base hits. So I'm going to put on the screen now a breakdown of his batted ball results, specifically against the lefty platoon over the course of his career. And one thing that you'll notice when you get all the way to the bottom in 2024 is that he had by far and away, unless you count the 2016 season when he threw 3 innings, we're not going to count that. He had by far and away the highest percentage of balls hit down the middle of the field by lefties. 52.4% of the batted balls this year from lefties were central. They weren't pulled. They weren't opposite. That's bad because that means that they're probably hitting those balls quite hard if they're going directly up the middle. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that his fly ball percentage was also the lowest of his career last year against lefties. But the line drive percentage was at or about the highest. So he was just giving up very hard hit line drives more frequently to lefties. And he wasn't getting what you want, which is the pulled ground ball results. The ground ball rate was basically at or about what you would expect for Wandy Peralta, but guys weren't pulling those balls. They were hitting them mostly central, and then a little bit to the opposite field. So he wasn't putting the Padres in positions to succeed. Basically, he's a guy who is meant to be a lefty specialist. Those are the situations in which he's brought out of the bullpen, but he stopped throwing the one pitch that breaks away from lefties. He stopped throwing his slider to lefties over the course of the season. You can see it. I'll throw this graphic up now as well. Pitch percentages against left-handed pitchers he wasn't really appearing much in the second half of the season, for being completely honest, but he just only threw his sinker and changeup. That's it. So my question with Wandy, and I know I've been a little meandering and I apologize for that, but what's the plan? That's my question.
Just get back to basics. All that information is just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I gave you a lot of information that may or may not be correlated. It's all bad, but it's just kind of like, what are we doing here?
No, yeah, that's the best question. I have no idea. Going and signing him, the only thought that I had for signing him, because nothing made sense. 4-year contract. We were competing against the Mets for Wandy Peralta, and the Mets didn't want to spend enough money to sign Wandy Peralta. That's what we did. And instead they signed Jake Diekman, and Jake Diekman is basically Wandy Peralta, and they were able to cut him because he was bad, which we would have probably cut him if we only gave him 1 year and $4 million like they gave Jake Diekman, which is probably what they wanted to give Wandy Peralta, about 1 year, $4 million. That's fine. Give Wandy Peralta 1 year, $4 million, but times that by 4 as a 32-year-old, where we have him until he's 35, 36 years old, and I don't know what the plan is. I don't understand it. There's nothing to me that makes sense. The only thing you can hope for is that he kills it in terms of BABIP. And this year he had a 2.33 BABIP against, and he still had a 3.99 ERA. So like, what are we doing here? Like, what if you're not going to strike folks out and you are maxing out your soft contact and you're still not good? Then what are you? What? Why?
Yeah, why? He had a 35.7% hard hit rate. That was the second highest of his career, but it was the first highest was in the pandemic shortened season, so much smaller sample size. The whole raison d'etre is to get soft contact, which works to an extent, but if he's not going to strike anyone out, I mean, has he ever had a strikeout rate as low as he did this year? No. Not even close. His lowest before this was 6.15, and that was a whole strikeout per 9 lower.
Yeah, I mean, he was in the zone more often, so I think that's probably what Niebla was trying to go for, because his walk rate was 5 walks per 9 last year, and it went down to 3 walks per 9 this year. So I think he was trying to get him in the zone more, but he just doesn't have the stuff to play in the zone or out of the zone. He just doesn't have the stuff.
Yeah. So, color us skeptical on Wandy Peralta, okay. I think is maybe the nicest way to put it. But we do not need to be sad because we have more guys who are on the bubble.
Bubble boys.
To discuss more bubble boys to go through. Next one on the list, Sean Reynolds. Sean Reynolds, the oft forgot about part of the Ryan Weathers trade. Am I correct in saying that? That's where he came over?
That is where he came over. I don't know if he's oft forgot about. I mean, he had, I don't know how many innings he had, like I think 11 innings. Yeah. I feel like for his 11 innings, they were pretty exciting in terms of Padres fandom. Lots of folks were like, ooh, this is going to be a guy.
Yeah, maybe off forgot about is not. I just mean we don't talk about enough that this guy was part of the Ryan Weathers trade. Like,
oh, that's true.
Just the whole Ryan Weathers. Remember Ryan Weathers? I guess is what I'm trying to say. What a time that was to be a Padres fan.
Playoff appearing Ryan Weathers, by the way. 1.1 innings in the playoffs, 0 ERA.
Oh yeah, he got 4 unbelievable outs in the speaking of a bubble boy, he was quite literally playing in the bubble during the playoffs. But okay, enough about Ryan Weathers. Let's talk about Sean Reynolds. What do you have for us, John?
Dude, Ryan Weathers also had a 3.63 ERA and 1.1 WAR last year. He's actually pretty good. So Ryan Reynolds is the reason why we don't care about that. Ryan Reynolds is
Not Ryan Reynolds, Sean Reynolds.
Sean Reynolds. No,
Ryan
Ryan Reynolds is why we don't care about it. Deadpool. This is shifting slowly into a Deadpool podcast. You will. No, so oh my God, Sean Reynolds, 6'8", 250 pounds, a big boy, is a very non-Wandy Peralta-like guy because his stuff is actually really good. It plays up. He throws 96 or 97 miles an hour actually, and he's got a good spin rate. He's got a lot of induced vertical on it. It's a nasty pitch. The stuff plus is 121, and then he has an even nastier slider that he plays off of it. So, 6'8" guy throwing a fastball with a high induced vertical and then a slider off of it. That's exciting, right? He's obviously got a super small sample size, but in those samples, he had huge whiff rates. He also had huge walk rates. Bringing back up Jake Diekman, this is basically what his career was based on. I mean, he wasn't 6'8", but high K rates, and then you are okay with the fact that you're giving up too many walks. He's also, being a 6'8" boy, the question is whether you're able to, improve upon that walk rate. And sometimes it's hard to get the mechanics of a 6'8" guy in line consistently so that he's, consistently throwing strikes. So I do wonder whether he's ever going to be a guy that is able to get his walk rate down. But, he has stuff that will play, especially to right-handed hitters. I don't know whether it'll play to left-handed hitters, but if you can, have him come in, I kind of think of him as like a Austin Adams kind of guy going forward. Hopefully one that doesn't hit as many people as Austin Adams, but kind of in terms of the results, kind of like Austin Adams, which to me is, with that walk rate, maybe not the most comfortable in like a closer role, but, pretty comfortable in a middle relief role where you need a strikeout or two, and he can, load the bases before striking a couple of guys out.
Yeah. Sean Reynolds is what I call a classic. He's just like, when I think of if I were to build like a stock reliever in my head and like a creative player, like make the most like just stock. It's a right-hander who throws a hard fastball and a good slider, and that's Sean Reynolds. Probably not making my guy 6'8", 250 in my head. Like that's a big boy. Yeah, that's a big bubble boy. So I think I'm a little bit worried to have Sean Reynolds coming in to get out of a jam during a game. You said something interesting in the notes, so I will make sure that John is credited with this thought. You said, I'd probably prefer him in spots where you want a strikeout and a walk isn't a huge deal, like in extra innings, which I was like, when I first thought about it, I was like, whoa, bringing this guy in extra innings and high leverage, like I don't know if I want to do that, but I take your point because there's an open base. Is that your point?
Yeah. I mean, a guy that doesn't give up a lot of contact is actually pretty good when there's, an open base or just runners on in general.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's first and second, then that's nerve-wracking because, it takes 2 walks to score a run. But at second base, he has to walk 3 guys before a run is scored. And so I'd rather have the strikeout, and then now folks have to, battle against no longer having the sacrifice fly in play. That sounds great for the play or for the extra innings. In the same way that Austin Adams was like that. We would commonly put him in, with where there's folks on base, but it wasn't like bases loaded. Like I wouldn't want him in with the bases loaded because it just takes 1 walk to score a run. But, a runner on third and 1 out, is there a better player than Austin Adams, in his prime? Probably not, because there's a good chance that he strikes someone out rather than give out the sec fly. And if he is going to give a walk, if he is going to give up a run, it's probably because he hit like 7 people in a row. So to me, there's utility in those folks.
Well, you make a really good point, John, because I think this actually points at why someone like Clay Holmes struggled a lot in high leverage over the course of the season in extra innings, because Clay Holmes is an incredible, a fantastic reliever for the New York Yankees. But he is a soft contact guy, and giving up soft contact with a runner on second and nobody out isn't actually a great outcome, because that runner can move to third quite easily, and then you've got the potential winning run 90 feet away with 1 out, and a sac fly wins the game. And so, the opposite, the opposite archetype that you'd want to remedy that is someone like Sean Reynolds, who is going to strike out a lot of guys, and maybe he'll walk some, but he's not going to give up a lot of contact. So to put some numbers on what we're talking about, in career in the minor leagues, Sean Reynolds has a 10.77 strikeouts per 9 rate. Very good. Very strong. He also has a 5.76 walks per 9. And he was walking guys long before he played in El Paso, when he was just a prospect in the Miami Marlins system. So this isn't something you can, point to, oh, well, the elevation, and he's throwing a breaking ball and like blah, 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 blah. No, he's always been a guy who's doesn't have a ton of command. But really big. He's got one of my favorite sliders on the MLB StatCast slider page is extension. Like the idea basically being like, how far are you throwing? Where's your release point in relation to home plate? Like how close are you getting to home plate when you actually let go of the ball? And it's like he's got like an 84th percentile, which I'm like, yeah, he's fucking 6'8". Like just like it might as well just be like a metric of like is he really tall? Oh, yes, he is. Oh, okay, cool. Is he not very tall? Oh, okay, he's not.
Or is he really tall and releases it super late? We'll get to that later when it's Alec Jacob throwing sidearmed because he's 99th percentile in extension.
He's 99th percentile. Wandy Peralta, by the way, number 2, second percentile. Like
it's because he's not good at anything, Raphie.
He's just like he's not even that short. He's 6 foot. You know what I mean? He's
just short arming.
Like, okay, let me put this as an example. Yuki Matsui, 5'8", not a big bubble boy. He has an 11th percentile extension ranking. So somehow, even though Wandy Peralta has 4 inches on Yuki Matsui, still can't get as close to the plate when he lets go of the ball. Anyway, I'm bottom line about Sean Reynolds. I'm very intrigued by him. I think that there is a lot. He has 2 really good pitches. Like, he's got a good fastball. He's got a good slider. It's just throw some strikes, bro. And like that's it. That is there's only one doctor on this podcast, but that would be my prescription for Sean Reynolds is just throw some more strikes, bro.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. I go type in Jake Diekman into Fangraphs and look at his like profile. I think that he's probably going to end up being right-handed version of Jake Diekman, i.e. someone who has a 10 plus year career and he is able to strike folks out and he's also able to walk a lot of people, so he's always on the periphery of a roster, but he's going to make a roster somewhere. And that's fine. That's a major league player. It has utility when they're cheap, especially because you're not paying $4 million and then cutting them in the middle of the season. You can instead option him or pay him much less than $4 million or both. So, big boy, if he can get his mechanics in line. I don't know if he's ever going to figure out how to pitch to a lefty, but if you can line him up against specifically right-handed hitters, good right-handed weapon.
Good right-handed weapon. Okay, we have a couple more guys on our list we want to get to. So this is such an interesting guy to talk about.
Yeah.
Stephen Kolek. So Stephen Kolek, as many folks will remember, was a longtime member of the Mariners organization, and the Padres selected him in the 2020, I guess it would technically be the 2023 Rule 5 draft, because it probably happened in December of last year during the winter meetings. And if you're not familiar with the Rule 5 things, it's essentially once a guy accrues 3 years of professional service time, so 3 years in the minors, and he is not on a team's 40-man roster, then that player then becomes eligible to be selected in the Rule 5 draft, which if a player is selected in the Rule 5 draft, they then come to their new team and they must remain on the team's 26-man roster, not the 40-man, the 26-man roster, an active roster, the entire season, unless you're hurt, the entire season they have to stay on. And if at any point they are demoted, they actually get sent back to their original organization. So if the Padres decided to cut bait on Stephen Kolek at any point in the year this year and say this isn't working out, they couldn't send him to El Paso. They had to send him back to Seattle. So if you want to keep Stephen Kolek on your team forever, which is basically what would happen if he remained on the roster the entire year. He didn't remain on the roster the entire year for reasons we'll, I guess, talk about.
But they're not cheating reasons, by the way.
They're not cheating reasons. Very cool and legit. I want to say he had like a fingernail thing.
Yeah, classic fingernail injury that we all have once in a while.
Yeah, that just happened to come right after the trade deadline. I'm assuming banging his fist against the table once he saw that we had a completely new bullpen. Stephen Kolek. Let's talk about him, John.
Yeah, Stephen Kolek. What the hell? I don't even know where to start with Stephen Kolek. What is Stephen Kolek? I don't know. I know that we were excited about something. Why else would we have rostered him for, this 27-year-old for an entire year? I mean, to me, he's the most vanilla person that you would ever get in order, like, if you're trying to have someone on your roster for an entire year while you're trying to be in a pennant race, there's got to at least be like some tasty snack at the end of this rainbow horizon, right? I don't get it. I do think that he's a valuable pitcher, so I'm happy that he ended up staying with our team. I just don't know, like, the opportunity cost of that was really strange to me. He's he's going to go into his 28-year-old season. We're going to have obviously a lot of control over him, but he's kind of, as a 28-year-old reliever, maxed out in terms of what you would be expecting out of him. At least that's what I see in his profile. There's not like sexy things. He doesn't have a lot of spin, doesn't have a lot of velo, doesn't have a lot of whiffs, doesn't have a lot of Ks, but he does have good command. He's able to locate all of his pitches. He does that new thing, which is the 3 fastball mix, the cutter, the sinker, and the 4-seam. He has a slider off of that, a changeup as well. So, he's using all of those. He's, commanding them. That's the best that he can do. He doesn't. None of these pitches are like absolutely like dynamite pitches. They're all major league average pitches, which is valuable. And if you command them well, that's valuable. But in the bullpen, it's strange. He's just a guy that's gonna get a few outs, I suppose, and like not kill you overall. But also, you are never going to use him in the playoffs. I can't even imagine a mechanism by which you would ever use him in the playoffs because he doesn't have a single pitch that's going to dominate.
Yeah. I think a successful bullpen in some ways is almost like a traveling circus. Or I think a maybe not as PC of way of saying it a while ago would have been like a freak show. You know what I mean? Where you've just got like a bunch of weirdos like that it's a collection of weirdos who hang out in a fenced enclosure for a couple hours a day. And then occasionally a few of them get to trot out. But most of the time, the oddities remain in the fenced in enclosure. And I'm not talking about that these people are weird in any sort of way other than the fact that in the baseball world, they're weird. Like, at a successful bullpen, you have pitches that you would have never seen before in your life that are like a 92-mile-an-hour fastball with incredible induced fastball rise. You wouldn't believe it. Imagine I'm a carnival barker. And you've got a guy with an arm angle who we'll talk about after Stephen Kolek. That's
Spoilers.
Lower than almost any arm angle you've ever seen before. It's crazy. And, you've got a guy in Jeremiah Estrada who's got this pitch. It's called the chitter. You've never heard of it before. Like, that's a good bullpen. You know what I mean? Like, it's like sure. You're throwing looks out there that you've never seen. You're constantly keeping hitters on their toes. And that's the thing about Kolek that I just don't get. This is a really milquetoast pitcher. Who, he has a sinker that is okay at generating, weak contact, ground balls, etc. But, I don't know that he can throw in the big leagues if he doesn't develop more break on his secondary pitches because you can't throw him against lefties. Like, that's like, you just can't. Over an entire, season, couple season sample size, against, especially in the NL West, I really don't think that you can throw this guy against lefties. Like, the thing that's the most interesting to me about Kolek, and like what I think his crazy, cool, super weird attraction could be when he trots out of the bullpen, is that he has a changeup that he threw 55 times. It's not a big sample size, but it's enough that I'm willing to look at the movement profile on it and be intrigued because it had 3 inches more tail and 5 inches more drop than the average right-handed changeup. And he only threw it, like I said, 55 times, 7% of the time. And I don't know if there's, I would say there is smoke there. I don't think that there is fire, but it is a pitcher that breaks. It's a pitch that breaks arm side that theoretically he could throw against lefties. Because right now, in his profile, he has a cutter, doesn't really cut. Got a sweeper, doesn't really sweep. And so he's really reliant on that sinker when he's up against lefties. And I don't know that it is like the most remarkable sinker that you've ever seen. So
It's not. Spoilers,
yeah.
it's not.
it's not. So that's okay. John's holding up a card that says Kolick is okay, and there's a Ninja Turtle on it. Which Ninja Turtle is that?
What? Are you kidding me?
Is it Raphael?
No, it's orange.
I don't know the Ninja Turtles.
Oh
I'm not a Ninja Turtle guy.
Unbelievable. Podcast over, everybody. Sorry. He doesn't know that the orange Ninja Turtle, the best one of all, is Michelangelo. And that is very upsetting for everybody.
Know that? I don't watch the Ninja Turtles.
They were, oh my God. This is the best Ninja Turtle. And growing up, the 90s, 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Secret of the Ooze, both classic films. They get the designation film, not movie, because they're so good. Unbelievable.
My biggest connection to the Ninja Turtles is the Vanilla Ice song that he sang for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Classic.
Go Ninja, go Ninja, go. Go Ninja, go Ninja.
Yeah, right in the middle of the movie. Right in the very actually, it is in the climax of the movie. Right in the climax of the movie, while they're fighting their opponents, there's just a Vanilla Ice concert for some reason. It's amazing.
Okay, so this is maybe like we were supposed to be talking about Stephen Kolick right now, and instead we're talking about the Ninja Turtles. He's just okay. He is a depth piece. He is a quad A guy. He's not someone who I ever would have expected that we would have had on the roster for 4 months of the year.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like if we got, what was his name? Not Patino, Perdomo. It was like if we got Luis Perdomo again, and we just had him for the middle of a
and we couldn't demote him.
Team. Yeah, and no, yeah. But Perdomo was a Rule 5 guy that we got before. But at the time, we were terrible, right? It was like, we were a terrible team, so that made sense. But, why would you get him now? It makes no sense.
Yeah. So, head scratcher there, maybe.
But he's fine. I'm excited to have him in terms of depth and optionability, when your bullpen's struggling and you call him up and nobody's seen him for a while and he does fine for, 10 innings and then goes back to AAA. That's fine. Not worth a whole year, but fine.
Okay, well, let's talk about our final guy. Like I said, he is a tremendous oddity. He's got an arm angle that's as close to perpendicular as you've ever seen before.
It is. That's true.
It really is. It really is. It's Alec Jacob. And I don't want to spoil it, but he has a -1 degree arm angle. So, if you think of a clock where 12 is 90 degrees and 6 is negative 90 degrees and 3 o'clock is 0 degrees, that's basically Alec Jacob is pitching at 3:05 p.m. Is
not even 3 3:02 p.m.
Yeah, it is dead perpendicular to the ground. Parallel to the ground, perpendicular to his body. Okay, tell me. That's all I care about, really. What can you tell me something more enlightened about Alec Jacob?
Yeah, for your little carnival of creatures analogy, Alec Jacob lines up perfectly. This is an exciting guy for you in your little circus. So there are very few people. For some reason, I was only able to get NL, but in the NL, he, like you said, he throws almost exactly parallel to the ground, perpendicular to his body. There's basically nobody else that throws like him. There's one guy, Justin Lawrence, who throws kind of similar for the Rockies at -2, and the difference being that Lawrence pretty much only throws a fastball and a slider, whereas Alec Jacob, from his perfectly parallel to the ground release angle, throws 4 pitches. So there's nobody that profiles similarly to him. Most of the time when you have those sidearm guys, they are kind of fastball, sometimes also sinker, and then commonly a slider. But he has those as well as a changeup, which allows him to, mix and match while throwing from an angle that basically nobody in the whole league has. There's some guy named Jay Hergit for the Braves. I don't know who that is, but he also throws at a 1 degree off of parallel to the ground angle, so basically the same as Alec Jacob. But other than that, there's basically nobody that throws like that, and which means every time you go up to the plate, you haven't seen this before, and he has 4 pitches, which means that even if you see him twice, you might get a different assortment of those 4 pitches, and he's also not, one of our higher leverage guys, which means that even if you are on the Braves, say, you might not see him more than 1 or 2 times per year, while he's throwing from this weird angle 4 separate pitches that are all, different. To me, that lines up with your little circus idea in that how good does he actually have to be to at least be fooling folks the majority of the time. And I think that that's kind of the goal for him going forward. And I think that he could probably be successful in that role. Would I be super excited to put him into a higher level leverage situation? There are folks that do come from like a weird angle and are put in higher leverage situations. Like Ryan Thompson for the Diamondbacks is a good example. Tyler Rogers, I believe, is the right-handed, whereas Taylor's the left-handed. So Tyler Rogers goes from a negative 64-degree angle, so he's like, an actual submariner. He actually has like, a little bit more, let's say, stuff to his pitches. It's harder to gauge stuff when you throw from such a weird angle, but he does have more, like, say, whiff rate, just movement on his pitches overall. But from a fool the folks standpoint, he is able to get, good whiff rates, good K rates. In his 14 innings, he had 11.66 Ks per 9, which is obviously very good and obviously a small sample size. But in the minor leagues, the lowest that he ever had in terms of K per 9 was, I think, 10.54. So he's able to strike folks out. He tends to have incredible, success at the minor league level. He can give you more than an inning. He is throwing from a weird angle that people aren't going to prep for. Nobody's going to be going into the batting cage and like prep for a perfectly perpendicular to his body pitch so that they can practice for a guy that you might see in the 6th inning. To me, I'm much more excited about Alec Jacob and his possible contributions than, say, Stephen Kolek.
100%. He's got 3 pitches, a sinker, a changeup, and a 4-seamer that, in my opinion, like have truly excellent pitch shapes. He's got a changeup that has 4.3 inches more tail and 3.4 inches more drop than the average right-hander. He's got a sinker that has basically similar numbers in terms of tail and drop. And then he's got a fastball that, he gets dinged on the rise because his fastball only goes 87 miles an hour. But it has 7.5 more inches of tail because he's literally throwing it at like a side, like if you look at the here, I'll put it on screen. I'll put it in the document as well at a later time. But like Statcast has some observed movement, and it literally is done on a clock, like 12, 2, 3, like, and the observed movement on his fastball is like completely sideways. Like it's like the pitch completely runs in towards righties, runs away from lefties. Which means you can throw it to both of them, which is really exciting. It works in a way that I think, a lot of these oddity type pitchers, sometimes all that they have is the arm angle, and it's just a different look. But whereas Alec Jacob has the arm angle and he has the pitch shapes to back it up. So that's
and
where
not just against righties too, which makes him, valuable. He has a changeup with a 37% whiff rate that he can throw against lefties.
Yeah,
that's a guy. And it's not a guy, but it's a guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not a dude, but he's a guy.
There we go. That's what
you know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like I said, he's got 4 pitches, and I mean, he definitely leans on the 4-seamer and the changeup a little bit more against lefties than he does against righties, but I wouldn't say that he particularly shies away from throwing anything to anyone, which is exciting. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, my biggest worry about Alec Jacob is that his elbow like enters the stratosphere. Like just as he's throwing it one time, just snaps off and goes into orbit. I really don't know how anyone can throw that way. I don't know how anyone throws a baseball ever. But so, I mean, it probably helps that he's not throwing as hard. But so long as he's healthy, again, I don't think he's ever going to rise to a closer, extremely high leverage arm. I don't think Alec Jacob thinks that. I think he's a guy who figured out a way to get a big league career for himself. And I applaud that. And, I hope it works out.
Can I bring up something that I was just talking about with Craig on the radio earlier? I didn't tell you this off air, but it's so I told you that I was looking up after our Waldron videos, I was looking up all the videos to try to put together Waldron clips, And I noticed that the pitches to Jazz Chisholm, that Jazz Chisholm was all, saying these are the nastiest pitches I've ever seen, were Waldron's fastest knuckleball that he threw all year at 84 miles per hour, the number 1, and then the number 20th at 83 miles per hour knuckleball that he threw. So they were some of the hardest knuckleballs that he threw all year were those ones that Jazz Chisholm said were, so unbelievably disgusting. And those pitches, those knuckleballs, are barely slower than Alec Jacobs' four-seam fastball at 87 miles per hour. So that's pretty crazy that he's throwing like nearly Alec Jacobs' fastball as a knuckleball at times. Also, when I looked further, when I stratified the data on Waldron, when he throws above 80%, which is about 20%. Sorry, when he throws over 80 miles per hour, which is about 20% of his total knuckleballs, those pitches had an OPS, I believe, of 362 against. So that's just something that I ended up picking up post our last episode when I was looking up the video. But, random fact, when Waldron throws a very fast knuckleball, it works. And also, you can get by when you only throw 87 miles an hour like Alec Jacob, as long as you have enough, trickiness to it, which he does.
And that brings us really to the end of our Bubble Boys. There are a couple of names on the list. Logan Gillespie and Tom Cosgrove.
I think he got non-tendered or something. He's not on the Padres anymore. And I don't know what's going with Tom Cosgrove.
Okay, so the bubble has been popped on Logan Gillespie.
He's the first victim of the Bubble Boys. Us recording.
Yeah, pre us recording. John just said, I don't really care about either. So I'm not going to. John does a tremendous amount of research for every episode, pulls lots of data, stuffs into this Google Doc that we use. And I got down to their names and there was just nothing there. Just nothing.
No, there was something that says, I don't really care about either. And I don't.
Tom Cosgrove, he has a freak show pitch.
Doggy door.
He has the doggy door. Lest we forget the doggy door slider. But unfortunately, he hasn't been able to tame it, and he doesn't really have a lot of other stuff going on to justify it. So that's our Bubble Boy collection. Again, Wandy and Yuki, who are not really Bubble Boys. And then Sean Reynolds, Alec Jacob, and Stephen Kolek. Those are our Bubble Boys. Any final thoughts, John?
Yeah, so you have 8 spots. Let's see. Suarez, Adam, Estrada, Morihone, that's 4. Hoeing, that's another 1. So that's 5. That means that pre anything happening, that's already 5 of your 8. Who are the other 3?
And also, that's only 1 lefty.
Ooh, good point.
Well, you didn't say Yuki and Wandy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Who are? Yeah. Well, Yuki's just gonna be in it. That's guaranteed.
Yuki's in.
Wandy is also
Wandy's
in, but not by his skill or talent or any reason, but money.
Yeah, Wandy bought his way in.
So pick one of the other 3 to start the year.
Oh, between Reynolds, Jacob, and Kolek.
Tuck.
I want Jacob in there. Like,
okay.
As your 8th guy, he's like a perfect 8th guy in the bullpen. It's
he
just
gives you
like
multiple innings too.
Yeah. Like let's just throw him out there. Let's do it. Reynolds, I don't think he's ready for prime time. I think he needs to cook a little bit longer, and once I can see a walk rate below 4 in El Paso, I will be like, okay, great.
Wow.
He's done. Take him out of the oven.
You're ambitious, but I like it.
Yeah. And Kolek is just, we know what Kolek is probably the first guy up from El Paso. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. Kolek's fine. Kolek is okay.
He's okay.
This is Michelangelo.
And we're okay, John, because we've just finished part 2 of the Bubble Boy series. We'll be back with you sometime soon, the next week or 2, with our conclusion to the Bubble Boy series, in which we'll be talking about the hitters, the position players who will potentially be or not be on the Padres roster. Final thoughts? Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
By the time you listen to this, Thanksgiving will be done. So
It's true.
Happy holidays.
I hope
Merry
it was
Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Everything else.
good. Enjoy your leftovers.
Enjoy your leftovers. And yeah, any fun plans for the weekend?
Yes.
Not going to elaborate. I love that.
We're at our quota, and this is on relievers, Raphie.
I love, John, even more than your baseball knowledge, what I love is your boundaries. For John Fracoda, I'm Raphie Cantor saying thanks for listening to this edition of Pods of Butt Replacement, and we will see you next time.